right now, we talk a little NBA. We had a lot of NBA conversation yesterday. And right now, Keith Smith, NBC, and, of course, Yahoo NBA joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline to talk some more NBA stuff that is happening. We know May 1st is going to be the big day, but at Yahoo, you wrote out a scenario. Now, we talked a couple of weeks ago that there were these bubble cities. Atlantic City was one. Orlando was another. But you really went in depth about why Walt Disney World, Keith, might be the place that is the perfect fit for the NBA to kind of relaunch its season.
Yeah, I really did. I think, what you're looking for is you have to have the hotel rooms, you have to have the basketball facilities, you have to have the ability to create a bubble. Those three things are the non-negotiables. Well, Walt Disney World has 20-plus hotels that range anywhere from 300 to 3,000 rooms per resort. They've got the basketball facilities with the ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex, so that one's pretty easy. And then you have the ability to create a bubble, which they can do a little easier than some of these other places because they're a private property. They can take a little corner of their property over there by Wide World of Sports, cordon it off. They control all the roadways. They can really control everyone who gets in and out. And then there's also the fact that they have a great working relationship with Disney, ESPN, and the like. So I think it really makes a lot of sense for Walt Disney World to at least get a good amount of consideration if the NBA goes a single site idea.
Right now, the question, I guess, where is the NBA? And I know they said May 1st, but is there any buzz behind the scenes that people saw this article and said, hey, look, yeah, that is being discussed. That is a possibility. Do we know that one or any place is higher on the list than another, or that these bubble cities are even the way they're thinking about it? I saw the NHL today has decided that playing in like a one location is kind of off the table for them.
Yeah, I think from what I understand from the NHL side is that it's just so hard for them to find the necessary hockey facilities to be able to host their entire league in one place. But from the NBA itself and Adam Silver are saying, hey, it's on the table. We're just listening. We're not even there yet. And they continue to say it's May 1st is when we're going to start really looking at things. That's hopeful and we'll have a better idea. I think that's even a bit of an arbitrary date, just kind of the start of a new month, and we'll look at it from there. But I have heard from folks within the league and folks with teams that the idea of playing at Disney is on the table because it checks a lot of the boxes that the league would be looking for if they end up going this route.
Yeah, and you mentioned, when reading it, quite frankly, it seemed like, yeah, that is a very good setup there that the league, I don't know, here in Atlantic City, there's plenty of hotels. I just don't know that they have the basketball venue or venues, I guess. Boardwalk Hall, you could put a court in there and play games. They probably have a second place that you can play games without people in there. But after that, I mean, you could use ballrooms to the casino, but not all in one place. It sounds like the Walt Disney World spot, you could do multiple games all in one very close location.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they come down here for vacation, they don't even know the Wide World of Sports Complex exists over there because your focus is on, I got to get into the theme parks, I got to ride rides, I got to meet Mickey, I got to do those things. Well, Wide World of Sports is huge. They have 3 venues for basketball. They've got the one that's probably the most well-known, which is the HP Fieldhouse. That is the one that hosts the college basketball tournament over Thanksgiving every year. That one's on TV all the time. But then they have another facility called the Visa Center, which is really what I liken it to. It's like an airplane hangar. It's just a big, wide open space that they can construct whatever they do. And when they have the Junior NBA championships here, when they have the AAU National championships here, and then several other AAU tournaments, I've seen as many as 12 courts in that one spot put together. And then they have a third facility, which was built primarily to host the cheerleading and dance competition. It's quite aptly named The Arena. It doesn't have a sponsor to it, but the arena can also be configured for basketball. The other piece is all of these facilities are broadcast ready. They've got everything you need to broadcast games from there. They've also got all training facilities that teams would need. They've got the medical facilities right on site. And you have the ability to say, all right, well, these areas are going to be for games that we're going to broadcast and play. These will be the practice areas. They can build up the schedule there to make sure teams still get their own private time and the like in those areas. It just seems to make a lot of sense. If we're going to get really weird with this, everybody's going to have to kind of adjust to something that they haven't done before, and this idea makes as much sense as any to me.
Yeah, and I guess you could possibly steal the baseball model and put the East Coast teams maybe in one location, the Western Conference teams in another location to kind of keep it even more spread. And we hope, by the way, that is something that can even happen. Although I know you're in Florida, which seems like the Wild Wild West down there. Like, go out to the beach, have a good time, go bowling, go out to dinner. Who cares?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Now, there are definitely some things about my adopted home state here. Let's make that clear. It's my adopted home state. That make me cringe a little bit. But one thing also working in the factor for sports is our governor here deemed sports an essential service. So that opens up things much quicker and easier for a return to play for these various sports leagues and competition because they can get right after it. So I think that is something that makes things just a little bit easier. That could maybe work in favor of this idea, whereas some of the other things based about Florida might work in the other direction.
All right. I want to get Keith Smith with us, by the way, at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. We talk every Wednesday on the NBA and plenty of stuff happening. Ben Simmons, it appears, and this was a question on whether he would be healthy. We hadn't heard anything about that back injury until yesterday. Respected reporter Jackie McMullen of ESPN reported that if the Sixers and the season come back, that he will be ready to play. That's big news there. What does that mean, in terms of, do we change our expectations for the Sixers knowing that Ben Simmons will be back and, that they didn't know what his situation was going to be? Does that change our thought on Philadelphia all of a sudden when this thing returns?
Yeah, I think it gives you a little more optimism. The timeline had been progressing towards him being out for the end of through the end of the regular season, and then we would see what it looked like for the playoffs. Now that it sounds like he may be back, I think you could be a little bit more optimistic. Now, back injuries are so tough. You can be feeling great, and then the next day you're down and out again, and it can be weeks or months before you're able to play. But I think this is the ability where he was really able to kind of get off his feet for the time he needed, then do his rehab, his strengthening, all those things, and get himself back into a position, where maybe he is, able to make a return if this season comes back, whereas before it might have been a little bit more questionable. So I think optimism is fair here.
All right, Keith, the other part of this article had to do with a very prominent topic around Ben Simmons, which is shooting the basketball. I thought the area of the article that started off with in another city, perhaps, really was an eye-opener. It's mentioned by Brett Brown that if he didn't play in Philly and he was on a bad team, that he would be cranking threes. I'm sure of it. Do you agree that if Ben Simmons was on a bad team, that he would just come into the league cranking up threes because the team wasn't all? I don't agree with that comment at all.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. I mean, maybe more than what's he taking, 5 or 6 real ones in his career. Those maybe a handful more, but I think it's more about him as a player than it is about his situation. I just think he's not comfortable with the shot. He's not comfortable stepping back there and taking those 3-point shots. Now, maybe if you're on a bad team with absolutely no stakes at all, maybe he feels a little bit more comfortable stepping out and shooting the ball. But I don't think, cranking threes, that seems to be going a little bit far.
Yes, and there's a lot there in that whole section that I thought was, the whole part about the Western Conference coach saying it doesn't matter that he hit 2 or 3 threes a game. They're still going to defend him, the same way, much like Giannis Antetokounmpo, that the thought is we want Giannis to shoot threes. So people who act like if Ben shoots a few, that might open things up, it's going to take a while before teams really tweak the way they defend him.
Yeah, 100%. The old saying in the NBA is shoot as many as you want. We only care about how many you make. And that's what's important is, every once in a while you'll hear, well, just the threat of a guy shooting out there opens things up a little bit. And we've seen that some with Giannis where guys will press up on him or maybe a little bit closer than they would have. But where Simmons has shown not even the ability to make them, but no willingness to even take them, teams are going to sag off him. And it's going to take a long time. It's usually a year of consistent, good 3-point shooting before teams are like, all right, we better check up on this guy a little bit closer.
The other part of this, 2 things. Ben Simmons himself said with threes, it's never been like that. In other words, he said, I could take hook shots from the elbow because I've done it so many times. I'm confident it'll go in second nature. He said with threes, it's never been like that. I've got to make it a point of emphasis. I could be one of those guys shooting 30%. So essentially he's saying, I could shoot 30% from three right now, but I'd rather be ready to shoot 40%. I mean, wouldn't Ben Simmons shooting 30% right now be better than not shooting at all?
Yeah, it might be. As long as, you're talking a low volume of attempts. If you're talking taking 2 or 3 a game, that's fine. If you're shooting 30% or in that range and you're taking 10 a night, well, that's maybe a little bit of an issue
absolutely.
because you're probably finding better shots. But I think for him, I think you need to be realistic as well. Is we've been there. We watch these guys warm up before games. Guys who never take a three-pointer in a game are out there drilling them left and right. And watching NBA players shoot in warm-ups and before the arena is full is unbelievable. It feels like they never ever miss.
Never.
I'd never get into a shooting contest with the worst shooter in the league. That's how great these guys are. But shooting 40% in a game, that takes a lot. That's a pretty good mark. That's about the mark where you start saying, all right, this guy's pretty good here. We got to really, make sure we're on here. So that, jumping from I'm not going to take any, then all of a sudden I'm going to start shooting 40%. That's just not something that really happens in the league.
All right, last one for Keith Smith here. Kevin Boyle, his high school coach, who is a more high-profile high school coach than the English teacher coaching high school basketball. This is a guy who was hired to coach high school basketball and high school basketball only at an academy level. He said, if I were in charge of the Sixers, I'd tell them, if you don't take a pull-up jumper and a perimeter shot in each half, I don't care about your percentages. You're sitting. Now, Brett Brown has said that I've told Ben, if you aren't willing to shoot, then do I just bench you? Brown has suggested that they decided to go down a different avenue. And Boyle had said, I don't want to read people saying I can't shoot. Well, right now they're saying you won't shoot, and that's worse. There's a lot in there that the high school coach is essentially telling the Sixers, you need to tell this guy he's going to be benched, and that's the best way to go about it. And then you have the Sixers saying, we don't think that's the best way to go about it. What's the best way in your mind to tell Ben Simmons, we're going to bench you if you don't shoot, or let him get comfortable and shoot when you're ready?
Yeah, they are, Kevin Boyle at Montverde Academy. They are right down the road from where I live here in Orlando. So I'm very familiar with him and his program. They run the high school program very much like NBA teams run their clubs and their programs there. So when he speaks, it is, it does carry a lot more weight. It's so tough because I'm not there. So, I think Brett Brown, you got to default to what he is saying now is because it's very easy to say that. But Brett Brown also knows, hey, if I really push this guy, one of two things are going to happen. Either he's going to miss him and he's going to lose all confidence in it together, or I could just break him entirely and not have him at all. And then what are you going to do? You're going to play, Alex Burks in the years past, TJ McConnell, Raul Neto. Like, you're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. So I think.
But it's almost, Keith, that his lack of shooting could be the thing that ends up ultimately getting Brett Brown fired.
It absolutely could be. And I think, for Brett Brown, what he's got to weigh is, does Ben Simmons on the court and all the things he does do outweigh him off the court in the things, or they outweigh having him not on the court at all, versus, the non-shooting. And that becomes, that's the question he needs to answer. And that's the question, for Brett Brown, that's why he's paid to do what he does. And yeah, it could ultimately be his undoing. And I think, that's a little unfair, but, he's had a lot of years there to figure this out. And if this is the thing that ended his time in Philadelphia, then this thing that ends his time there.
Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. We talk NBA Wednesdays, and we'll see if the NBA is any closer to a decision next week. Of course, they said after May 1st is when they will decide. So we'll be a couple days short of that, but we'll probably have more buzz and information, so stick around for that. And, of course, he, like all guests, appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, Keith.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Y'all stay safe.